Welcome to our celebration of the League of Women Voters of Colorado, an organization that is needed more today than at any other time in its 100-year history. I'm Ann Trujillo, and I am honored to be the MC for this evening's celebration for the love of democracy and for the love of the League, which is brought to you in the comfort of your home for the first time. We can't be physically together, but we're together in spirit and in the YouTube chat. 2020 was a year unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of the United States. The core tenets of the League were threatened repeatedly, and every time the League mobilized to make democracy work and empower voters. Just as the League celebrated 100 years of women voting and 100 years of their organization, they were called upon as a force to be reckoned with in defense of democracy. A champion for ensuring that every citizen of this state who was eligible to vote was able to do so easily and without interference, misinformation, or suppression. A protector of the fundamental right of every citizen to vote to support their beliefs and their passions for the betterment of their neighborhoods, their cities, their state, and their country. In this unprecedented year, the League was here for Colorado and its people, and tonight we invite you to be here for the League, to do your part in funding the vital services it provides for all Coloradans. At any time in our program, you can donate by clicking on the link below the video. The League of Women Voters of the United States was founded 101 years ago on February 14, 1920 in Chicago, Illinois. Born of the women's suffrage movement, the League was organized when it became apparent that the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution would finally be ratified and grant voting rights to women citizens. Since its founding, the League has been a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. It neither supports nor opposes candidates for office at any level of government or political parties. Fundamentally, the League works to influence policy through advocacy to create a more just world for us all. The League of Women Voters was organized in Colorado in 1928. We are here to celebrate the League's many impacts, honor 3 barrier-breaking women, and call you to action for all that still needs to be done. Here to kick us off tonight are the League's board chair, Karen Sheik, and the chair of Leader of Democracy 2021, Barb Madison.
Thank you, Ann, and thank all of you for joining us tonight. Out of my love of democracy, I am proud and honored to lead our Colorado League of Women Voters. I just have to say again that this has been a year that has tested our democracy like no other, and I am particularly proud that our 2,300 members across the state registered almost 2,500 citizens to vote, educated and motivated voters through more than 270 events, and our Volunteer Legislative Action Committee advocated for over 100 bills during a highly unusual legislative session. When confidence in our elections was undermined by some elected officials who repeatedly lied about voter fraud, the League was here to set the record straight with resources such as our nonpartisan voter education website, vote411.org, which saw usage climb through the roof. We are also here tonight to pay tribute to 3 barrier-breaking women who embody the very spirit of the League in their word and deeds. So keep your shoes on, because there's broken glass everywhere, as you'll learn when hearing about the lives of Senator Polly Baca, Lauren Castile, and Elizabeth Piper Inslee.
I am very proud of how we've shown our love for our country's basic democratic principles and processes this year, especially in the face of threats from every level. I love that the League is dedicated to making democracy work. A big thanks goes out to all of our supporters for joining us and supporting us every step of the way. I especially want to recognize all of our partners, our volunteers, and Leader of Democracy ambassadors for spreading the word about this great event. We'd like to spread the news about all the League does to protect democracy and empower voters. Anyone can subscribe to our e-newsletter in the link below the video You don't have to be a member to be in the know. Now I would like to introduce two incredible Colorado public servants from Colorado Springs, Wayne and Holly Williams. Wayne is a former Colorado Secretary of State who is responsible for Colorado's cyber-secure, nationally recognized mail-in voting system that was a model during this election season. Wayne was the League's Leader of Democracy in 2019 and is currently a councilman at large for the city of Colorado Springs. Holly Williams is an El Paso County Commissioner.
Thank you. We are thrilled to be here tonight to honor barrier-breaking women and to support the League of Women Voters, whose work is more important now than ever. You can join us in support for the League at any point in this hour by clicking on the link on this screen and making your gift to show appreciation for the impact the League makes in Colorado.
Over the past year, Holly and I have worked hard to ensure that Colorado elections occur and to provide every legal voter the opportunity to vote and have their vote counted accurately. We've run party assemblies and a special district election amidst a pandemic and ensured their results were upheld. The League's work in elections is vital.
Most importantly, we've continued to ensure that the business of the public has been conducted openly and with the opportunity to all to participate. As an El Paso County Commissioner, I've fought hard to ensure both our elections and our economy are open and safe. And I was honored to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment by participating in the recreation of a photo from 1920 at the Garden of the Gods.
And as a member of the Colorado Springs City Council, I've worked to improve law enforcement funding and transparency.
So please join Wayne and I and make your gift now to ensure the League has the resources they need to protect our democracy.
Investment Trust Private Wealth Management is committed to unbiased, client-focused advice for all of your financial decisions, integrated wealth strategies, building better portfolios, legacy services for today. Investment Trust is proud to sponsor the work of the League of Women Voters of Colorado.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Rain Crow. I am the editor of the Legislative Report for the League of Women Voters of Colorado, and I originally joined the League many years ago because I think it is so important for youth to get involved in their communities, and I cannot think of a better organization to help defend democracy with than with the League of Women Voters.
Let's meet our first honoree of this evening, Colorado Senator Polly Baca, the first woman of color elected to the Colorado State Senate. Senator Baca will be speaking with her dear friend, Ramona Martinez, who has been a member of the Democratic National Committee from Colorado for 16 years and is a former president of the Denver City Council.
Good evening, everybody. Polly, I am so delighted to be here with you this evening, and I want to congratulate you being recognized as a leader of democracy by the League of Women Voters of Colorado. So let's begin our conversation.
Sounds good to me.
You indicated a little bit about why you got into politics, but what really made you run?
You know, it was really the pain of bigotry that caused me to get into politics. You know, even though I didn't think I had a chance when I first went to college, I got so involved in Young Democrats that led the way to I couldn't get a job in Colorado, even though I graduated with honors from Colorado State University, because there used to be a quota on the number of Mexican Americans they would hire as teachers in the Denver public school system. So, and I applied too late after the quota was filled. So because I got so involved in the 1960 campaign, I got a job in Washington, D.C. with the labor movement. And so I became an activist. I was part of the labor movement, then part of the the civil rights movement and part of the Chicano movement and part of the feminist movement. So I was a part of all of that activity. So when I came home in 1972, you know, we had been working so hard to get women and minorities to run for office because we weren't there. And so I knew that eventually I would run. But you know what did help was that I had worked in a lot of campaigns. You know, I had also been in Bobby Kennedy's national campaign staff when he ran for president in 1968. So I knew how to run. And so I was successful as a legislator. I mean, not only was I in the entire United States in 1974, I was the only Latina elected to a state house. There was a woman that had just been elected to the state senate in New Mexico, but I was the only one in the state house.
You know, you became a very well-known state representative, not only in the state of Colorado, but throughout the country. And how did you establish yourself in the state legislature, getting the kind of recognition that you so much deserved when you worked so hard as a state representative?
Well, you know, that's what it was. It was just working hard. You know, you just go in and you just, you know, make sure that you're present and that you have ideas and you speak up. And I learned how to speak while I was in the state legislature. I had not given very many speeches prior to that, but I sure learned how to do it while I was there. And my colleagues elected me as chair of the House Democratic Caucus. I was the first woman to ever chair the House Democratic Caucus in the state of Colorado. And I was elected, I think, in 1977 in that legislative session. And then I went off to the state senate in 78, and there had never been another woman of color elected to the Colorado State Senate. And you know something? I didn't realize I was making history at that point. I had decided I was going to stay in the House because I wanted to be Speaker.
What is the other thing that you're very proud of your life, of the things that you've accomplished?
I think there are two areas. One was when I served in the state legislature for 12 years, there were only 2 years that we were in the majority. That happened to be my first 2 years in the State House, and I got to help elect the very first Hispanic speaker, the very first person of color as the Speaker of the House, and that, of course, was our dear friend Ruben Valdez, you know, who just passed away recently. And then I was, you know, because I was involved nationally at the same time, I knew about legislation that was being talked about nationally. So I was the very first state legislator in 1980 to introduce a bill for pay equity. And I didn't get it passed. You know, we were in the minority. It took 40 years for it to become law. Last year, I was invited to the signing ceremony of that bill, and it finally became law. But I think the bill that I was most proud of was a bill that I didn't get passed. It was to get sanitation services for farm workers. Couldn't get it passed. Got a Republican in the House to carry it for me. We couldn't get it passed. But I happened to sit on the National Endowment for Democracy Board. So right next to me sat Reagan's appointee as Secretary of Labor. So I said to Secretary Brock, you know, I've been trying to get this legislation passed, you know, for health reasons. You know, you ought to have sanitation facilities on the farms. And I can't get it passed. And would you think about ordering it, you know, doing an executive order about that? And he looked at me and said, well, you know, normally that's, you know, passed in the state legislatures. And I said, yeah, but we can't get it done. And he said, well, I'll look into it. A year later, it took him a whole year, but a year later, he issued an executive order that not only Colorado, but farmers throughout the country had to have sanitation services for their farm workers if they had more than 10 employees. So I got so excited about that because I didn't get it done, but I made it happen anyhow.
What would you tell young Latinos that are deciding if they're interested in entering the political arena?
It's not the challenges that count. It's how we respond to those challenges. So I always tell young Latinos, you know, you can do whatever you want, but you have to know that you can do that and not be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know, if you want to do something, get in there and get your feet wet. You know, work hard, learn as much as you can every day, and then opportunity will present itself. And when it does, go for it, and enjoy it. And it's okay if you lose.
It's good seeing you today, even though we have to set apart and we have to wear our masks when we leave here. But
That's right.
I want to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Ramona, and thank you for sharing all of this with me.
It was my pleasure and my honor.
And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this amazing award. And I'm both humbled and honored.
Thank you, Polly.
Let's meet our next honoree of the evening, the CEO of the Women's Foundation of Colorado, Lauren Castile. This is the third Colorado-based foundation that she's been at the helm of, all in the name of social justice and inclusiveness. We couldn't think of anyone better to chat with Lauren than Dottie Lamb, who founded the Women's Foundation of Colorado and was the group's first board president. Dottie was also the founder of the Democratic Women's Caucus of Colorado and served as Colorado's first lady during her husband Dick Lamb's 3 terms as governor.
Lauren,
Dottie.
congratulations on this award.
Thank you.
I can't think of anybody who deserves it more. Leadership of the year. To me, you're kind of leadership of the century. So let's go from there.
Well, well, Dottie, thank you. That was very, very gracious of you. But when I think of the history of women, whether acknowledged or not, in the context of democracy, I stand on the shoulders of many, many others
We all do.
who have taken significant risks and action in order to protect democracy.
Right. I'd like to ask you, first of all, how you see feminism and racism, and how you see the battles that we have struggled, not just now, but back on when those other women were putting their shoulders out. I mean, history and now. What do you see the challenges were and still are?
I wrote a piece as I mourned the murder of George Floyd. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And where I said that we in the feminist movement need to confront some realities. That whether we look at suffragism, whether we look at women's marches, throughout the context of history, to be quite honest, the work around inclusion was not done. In fact, there was significantly intentional exclusion in the suffrage movement to exclude Black women. And certainly here in Colorado, as we talk about our being the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment, Native Americans and Chinese were not allowed to be citizens at that time. So the conversation has to continue. Pride was really galvanized by 2 women of color who also happened to be transgender. If we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, women led that, and among them queer women as well. So the role of women as movement leaders and fighters for democracy, women have been at the forefront, but women of color have not been acknowledged. So I would say that today, as we look at the white supremacists that attacked our nation's capital and capitals around the country, we have to also remember that white supremacy has been alive and well within this country. I often talk about rivers beneath the river, and white supremacy has always been the river beneath the river, that undertow, that current that can drag us down, that sometimes erupts into a tsunami, a wave, a current that can drag us under. It now cannot be denied by anyone. It is a context and a history with which people of color, and certainly Black people, have lived for as long as we have been in this country. And when I think about as well, within the Navajo Nation, we were talking about that a few moments ago, the death rates on reservations are unconscionable. That is also evidence. When we talk about the separation of families at the border and children in cages, that is also evidence. When we talk about a report that came out from the Institute for Women's Policy Research just a few days ago, saying that 156,000 jobs were lost in December. 16,000 of those were men. That means 140,000 jobs in December were all women. And among those women, Black and brown women made up the predominance of those. In fact, white women significantly advanced over the month of December. So these are not new issues as we look at our current context. The question is whether we can have the courage, as Darren Walker, who's one of my favorite people, president of the Ford Foundation, says that democracy is in fact the threat to white supremacy. So if we care about eliminating white supremacy to build a society that is based on the justices of not only the Constitution, but also the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights, then it is essential that we protect our democracy from anyone who would seek to destroy it, whether within our nation's capital that was built by slaves, enslaved people. We can't forget that as well. And that we do so with vigor. And the reason for that is not just because I am a Black woman, but it is, and that's important to me, seeing Kamala Harris now as the first Black and Indian American woman as vice president-elect is extraordinary, certainly for me personally, but it opens up a window of access and opportunity and possibility for all of us. Democracy makes our country better for everyone. The Statue of Liberty, as it stands there welcoming all people, is not about a few, it is about all. And in particular, the message that it gives is that we must extend our hands in welcome to those who have experienced oppression or who are poor. So as those predominantly peaceful protests for social justice occurred, really, truly, largely peaceful, no question about it, occurred, then what happens next? What are the policies that will change? How will we fight for democracy? You know, that's one way, and certainly the League of Women Voters in educating people about the issues is also essential. We also have to remember that the suppression of the vote has been going on for a period of time, for years. And I know that my father, who was there for the signing of the Voting Rights Act, is rolling in his grave, as they say, to think, as were all of those leaders, John Lewis being the last among them who died recently, never imagined that at that time, which is why John Lewis remained such a strong advocate for voting, And I want everyone to register, everyone to be educated, everyone to vote. They don't all have to agree with me, but the process of our democracy, the respect, the sacred right of our democracy must be upheld. It must be protected. It cannot be vilified in any way, shape, or form by violent mobs of white supremacy.
I think it might be time to wind up, but I want you to wind it up. And I want you to think of anything you have not said that you would like to say.
I'd like to share, actually, I guess in closing, something from I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, Maya Angelou. In essence, it says that the cage bird trills in fear, but the cage bird sings of freedom, right? And so the acknowledgement of both and, of some fear, legitimate fear that has been felt by our country is real. But the opportunity for freedom, for liberation, is for independence of the human spirit from a place of love for this country and for each other is possible. So y'all will have to read. You'll have to look up I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings yourselves probably.
The singing is the yearning and the going toward freedom.
Freedom.
And that's a great place to end. And this has been just delightful, Lauren. And I congratulate you again. And you will be a leader for these girls and women and everybody else that's disenfranchised in Colorado and in the nation. We all look up to you.
Well, our job is to pass the baton.
It's true.
That's
and
our
my
job.
gosh, they're picking it up, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are.
They sure are.
So
okay,
thank
good.
you to you
Yeah.
and to the League of Women Voters. I'm very honored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Delight.
Grow Design has 20 years of experience helping businesses and organizations tell their stories through user-focused intelligent design. We listen, learn, and work collaboratively to achieve successful outcomes, combining critical thinking with creativity. Whether you need marketing materials, a new website, or a full rebranding campaign, we will work with you to exceed your expectations, on time and within budget. Grow Design supports the League of Women Voters of Colorado in its effort to promote free and fair elections for all. Hello, my name is Cameron Manning, and I'm the Operations Manager for LWVCO. When folks ask me what I do for a living and I get to say I work for the League, I love seeing the recognition in their eyes. Simply, I'm with the League because there is always something for me to learn. I learn from our fiercely intelligent members and leadership whose perspectives and knowledge are clearly vital to our democracy. But more than that, I learn from everyday Coloradans of all kinds who call or email asking, what does this thing on my ballot mean? Or what can I actually do about this problem in my community? And I have the privilege to talk with these folks, to make connections, provide resources, to give them something I think no one else can provide. A safe, nonpartisan, authentic conversation about our democracy. What a treat. I certainly cannot get that outside the League, and it is no surprise to me that the most challenging of my conversations always end with incredible amounts of gratitude. So on behalf of these folks, join me in thanking the League of Women Voters of Colorado. Our work is changing lives. It's broadening perspectives, sometimes one by one. All said, the League is bringing us together. I see it, I live it. Thank you for your support today.
Next, we recognize the legacy of our final honoree, Elizabeth Piper Ensley, a pioneer of the suffragist movement nationwide and a leading force in pushing Colorado ahead of the national 19th Amendment ratification. 27 years before the national women's suffrage movement pushed African American suffragists to the back of protest marches, Mrs. Ensley, an African American educator and activist, served as treasurer of the Colorado Nonpartisan Equal Suffrage Association. She mobilized African American women to join the campaign and persuade African American men to vote for women's suffrage. When the referendum came in November of 1893, male voters passed women's suffrage, giving both black and white women the right to vote in Colorado. Accepting the award on her behalf and helping us to remember her, we welcome Linda Burks Brown, a board member for the Black American West Museum, which is housed in the former home of Dr. Justina Ford, whom you will hear about very soon. Linda, thank you for being here to help us celebrate Elizabeth Piper Ensley. What would you say is most meaningful in the legacy of Ms. Ensley?
Well, Mrs. Ensley was an activist. She was a journalist, and also she was part of the community that she related to people all across Colorado.
Yet she really wanted parity for women of color especially, right?
Yes, her history went from when she started in New Bedford, Massachusetts. She was a teacher, and she also created a circulating library at that time. So she was actively involved in Massachusetts. Of course, Massachusetts was actually, New Bedford, Massachusetts was part of the abolitionists and anti-slavery society. So she grew up being an activist with her parents that were freed.
And talk about the irony of the suffragist movement that was holding back African Americans while trying to advance women.
The irony of the suffrage movement was at the beginning, during 1848, there were many women, African American women, that joined the movement. But after the war, after the Civil War, that's when there was a split between the suffragist movement. The African American women, they desired social reform. And the white women's suffragists only wanted to have voting rights. And there was a split between the two, between the people of the organizations.
Sure. Huh, interesting. So she was clearly ahead of her time as in her role as an advocate for women and African Americans' rights. So do you have any idea what motivated her?
Well, what motivated her was her desire to have social reform and also to be a part of women's rights. In Colorado, Mrs. Ensley had, unfortunately, her husband passed away from an illness. And it reminded her of her rights that she did not have. She could not own property. Even though her husband had been deceased, she had to fight for this property for herself. And she found that by becoming a member of the women's suffrage organization in Colorado, that she could help other women as well as help herself in this endeavor.
We have a lot to learn still, don't we? Thank you so much, Linda. That's wonderful as we honor Elizabeth Piper Ensley. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
This is Ruth Nierenberg. I want to tell a story that was originally told by Kath Perrone. Kath most recently was the Vote 411 coordinator for the State League. She's also been president and a board member of the State League. And she used to tell this story at meetings. When Kath first walked into her first league meeting ever, she met a woman there and got to talking with her. And the woman said, women have groups of friends. You have your church friends and your school friends and your work friends and the parents of kids that your kids play with and neighborhood friends. We have groups of friends. The woman said to Kath, she said, but the League of Women Voters, these are my smart friends. These are your smart friends too.
Our family congratulates the Leader of Democracy 2021 Barrier Breaking honorees and the League of Women Voters for 101 years of empowering voters and defending democracy. We are delighted to be part of this event, the Our Family.
We thank you for being here with us to celebrate the important work of empowering voters and defending democracy. This Leader of Democracy event is the League's only fundraising event. So we're counting on your support tonight to sustain our push to be a force to be reckoned with wherever democracy is threatened throughout the year. If you haven't already done so, won't you please click on the link below the video to support our fight as generously as you are able? Now, I'd like to introduce the Colorado League's Executive Director, Beth Hendricks. Beth?
Thanks, Karen. I'm here to talk about our work this year, but first I have some really exciting news to share. Our friends are listening. We got a gift of $5,000 from DaVita, who appreciates the unbiased, nonpartisan education we provide for voters. Thank you, DaVita, for believing in us.
That's great news, Beth. Thank you. Let's take some time to tell our friends a little about what we've done this year so that hopefully more of you will also be inspired to support us tonight by clicking on that link below. Last year brought so many challenges to all of us. In addition, our democracy has been straight up threatened, making the League more valuable than ever and our voice needed more than ever. We've never been busier fighting for voter access, free, fair, and secure elections, transparent government, and citizen participation in our democratic systems.
Our Legislative Action Committee is led by Dr. Tony Larson, who recruits and trains a fearless group of volunteer lobbyists from around the state to influence the Colorado General Assembly on selected bills that reflect the League's positions and principles. The Legislative Action Committee followed more than 100 bills during the 2020 session. Our most critical issues to protect Coloradans included redistricting, law enforcement reforms, repeal of the death penalty, environment, climate, and energy measures, improving recycling and air quality, the Colorado Secure Savings Plan, fair housing, rent, mortgage, and utilities assistance legislation, and COVID-19 related measures. Whew. And we were relentless in a number of other vital statewide issues. We provided education, promotion, and funding to make sure every person in Colorado was counted in the 2020 census. We have supported a national popular vote for president since 1970, and we were the main organization promoting the campaign for the 2020 ballot. We are closer than ever to ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, thanks to our relentless campaign to bring this long overdue constitutional protection to pass. In a year of misinformation, lies, and inciting violence, our voter services were crucial. The League distributed almost 50,000 copies of ballot issues for the November 2020 election. We mailed more than 100,000 Get Out the Vote postcards to young voters ahead of the 2020 primaries. The League served at nationalization ceremonies for 800 new citizens and registered them as voters. We produced 26,000 copies of Your Voice, Your Vote, detailing how to register to vote in both English and Spanish. Our Vote 411 website had a 257% increase in statewide usage between 2017 and 2019, with more than 91,000 voters taking advantage of the service last year. The last leg of the League's stool is support for our statewide chapters who are fighting for democracy at the regional level. We distributed 12 grants to chapters and provided 21 events to support their efforts. But alas, our work is never done, as the saying goes. We have no time to sit on our laurels. It's going to be another pivotal year ahead, and we need your support to carry out our goals for 2021. This year, we'll be monitoring the redistricting processes that the League and many partners have worked so hard to make happen, once again putting Colorado at the leading edge of states with fair, equitable processes that listen to the voter and not the politician. We'll be advocating for multilingual ballots, alternative voting methods, and the elimination of inequities in healthcare. And because democracy is threatened when our political parties become too polarized to work together, we'll be promoting a return to civil discourse in our politics. We are optimistic about making democracy work as it should, where all are open to listening and really hearing differing perspectives as we tackle the dire needs of the least advantaged in our communities.
It's endless, but energizing work that is so important to support. I have another incredible gift to recognize. Investment Trust Corporation donated $2,500 in appreciation for what we've done to educate Colorado's voters. Thank you, Investment Trust Corporation. And thanks to all of you who are hitting that link and showing how much our work means to you. I consider support for the League an important part of my civic duty, and I know that you do too. So please join me and give what you can.
Hello, my name is Ann Bailey, Group Vice President at DaVita. And at DaVita, we take pride in how our teammates care for our patients and the communities in which they live and work. And we believe in being good civic citizens and therefore invest in furthering our civic discourse. For those unfamiliar, DaVita is a healthcare company. We have 200,000 patients and 60,000 frontline caregivers. And we're proud to recognize the League of Women Voters on their 101st anniversary. And it's a pleasure to support the Colorado League of Women Voters, which has helped create Denver's strong civic fabric. Take care.
And now we have a very special honor. Here to present our final Leader of Democracy Award to a very deserving student winner is Celeste Archer, Director of National History Day, Colorado.
Thank you, Ann. I am so proud to be here. National History Day encourages middle and high school students to create a presentation about the history of our democracy. In 2020, the League of Women Voters of Colorado presented a challenge to National History Day Colorado participants to produce documentaries about barrier-breaking women. The prize went to Jackson Moody, a junior at Boulder's Fairview High School. He won for his film on Dr. Justina Ford, the first Black woman physician in Colorado. Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy and honored to be here.
Oh, and congratulations again. This year, since it was virtual, we haven't had a chance to really see each other.
It's nice to meet you.
So tell me, if you can, what reaction have you gotten to your video from other young people? Do they know Dr. Ford?
Yeah, so I mean, I was honestly kind of shocked, but really happy and honored that I got really such a positive response from a lot of my peers. Our school does this really cool thing where after everyone's done their projects, we get to go around and kind of view others. So of course I got to see all the other awesome projects that my peers at Fairview were doing. But in response, I got some really interesting feedback that, like me, a bunch of them had never really heard of Dr. Ford before. But that once they'd sort of learned about her, they were also just so inspired, again, like me, by her perseverance and her kindness that she really demonstrated throughout her life.
Have you visited the museum? You did visit the museum, or have you? The Black Western American Museum, but it's her home.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, due to COVID, I haven't had the chance to go yet. I did manage to get access to some of their online materials when researching. But
Good.
In person, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing her important story with a whole new generation. It takes it to a whole new level, and to think that she delivered thousands of babies at a time, well, you know the story, when she wasn't really allowed in hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly incredible. Yeah, I think when I was researching, that was one of the things that really stood out to me the most, was just her persistence and her resilience in the face of these seemingly insurmountable barriers. I mean, you can imagine, as an African-American woman living in the early 1900s, getting your medical license was just absurd to most people. And she was continually denied her medical license. She was denied membership from the Colorado Medical Society. I mean, the licensing examiner famously told her, you have 2 strikes against you to begin with. First of all, you're a woman, and second of all, you're colored. And yet, she just persisted. She set up her own personal practice out of her home in the 5 Points neighborhood. And then after just fighting and fighting and fighting, she was eventually granted membership to the Colorado Medical Society, and then ultimately becoming Colorado's first licensed African-American female doctor.
Thanks, Jackson. Really, you make me proud. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from your piece.
Born in 1871 and living amidst the American progressive era of social reform, Dr. Justina L. Ford set a precedent for African-American women in her quest to become a licensed physician. Initially barred from the Colorado Medical Association and forbidden from practicing in Colorado hospitals, Ford overcame both racial and sexual barriers in beginning her own personal practice. Delivering over 7,000 children during her lifetime, Ford's ultimate success in becoming Colorado's first licensed African-American female doctor would not only set thousands of underserved patients on a path towards health, but inspire a multitude of African Americans and women alike to pursue the field of medicine. Ford continued to fight the pervasive barriers of minorities in medicine. Initially denied her medical license, the licensing examiner famously told her, "I feel dishonest taking a fee from you. You've got 2 strikes against you to begin with. First of all, you're a lady, and second, you're colored." At last, after years of persistence and refusal to take no for an answer, Justina fulfilled her lifelong dream of becoming a licensed physician, earning Colorado Medical License 3800 on August 1st, 1902. Justina began a personal practice out of her home in the 5 Points neighborhood, specializing in pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. For over 50 years, Justina served African Americans, Chinese, Mexicans, Japanese, Koreans, and Hindus, providing service in a time of racism and social injustice. "Folks make an appointment, and whatever color they turn up, that's the color I take them," she explained. Finally, in 1950, Justina broke the barrier against which she had been fighting her entire life, with the CMA and AMA both granting her membership. In 1951, the Cosmopolitan Club presented her with the Humanitarian Award for her aid to underserved communities, which she served up until 2 weeks before her death on October 14, 1952. At 81 years old, Dr. Ford left behind a legacy of resilience, passion, and kindness, one which would inspire a multitude of doctors and minorities alike in the years to come.
Dr. Justina Ford, to us, to African Americans here in Colorado, was as big or as important as Martin Luther King, as Rosa Parks, as Jackie Robinson, in terms of breaking down barriers and overcoming incredible hardship to get what she wanted, to do what she wanted, which was to serve and to be an inspiration to generations of Coloradans.
We are closing in on the final minutes of our event, and I want to thank everyone who has generously supported our cause tonight. If you've been waiting, now's the time to show your love for democracy and love for the League. Click on the link below to continue our urgent work. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our friends who have joined us and supported us tonight. We stand together as a powerful force while we continue to fulfill our mission to empower voters and make democracy work. We'll be sticking around in the chat for anyone who wants to continue the discussion. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
you.